Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Acts, the 14th chapter. And it came to pass in Iconium that they went both together into the synagogue. Because remember, at this point, Mark had left them. So they went to the synagogue of the Jews, and so spake that a great multitude, both of the Jews and also of the Greeks, believed, these being Israelites. But the unbelieving Jews stirred up the Gentiles and made their minds evil affected against the brethren. See, so they basically started to speak evil of the believers to turn them, okay, to turn the inhabitants, those in the land, against them. Long time, therefore, abode they, speaking boldly in the Lord. Right, so Paul and Barnabas were there for a good while, continuously preaching the word of the Lord, which gave testimony unto the word of his grace, and granted signs and wonders to be done by their hands. But the multitude of the city was divided, and part held with the Jews and part with the apostles. So now it's divided. Yeah, those wicked Jews that were offended, and envious, and didn't like the fact that the apostle Paul was teaching to, Israelite foreigners as well. And basically this wasn't an exclusive thing to just those that were brought up in the customs of the Jews. And so they decided to stir up people against them. So now you had some that believed, in the words of the apostles on that side, and then some that were supporters of these wicked Jews. And when there was an assault made both of the Gentiles and also of the Jews with their rulers, to use them despitefully and to stone them. So it got to the point, let's actually go into that word assault, but it got to the point where they plotted to kill them, right? A violent motion and impulse, a hostile movement, onset, assault, right? So there was this hostile movement to, both of the Gentiles and also of the Jews with their rulers, to use them despitefully and to stone them. That is Paul and Barnabas. So those that the Jews were able to convince to to join their cause, right? When it was made known, okay, these guys are trying to, they're trying to get violent over here. At that point, they was like, all right, we gotta dip out. They were aware of it and fled on to Lystra and Derbe, cities of Lycaonia, and onto the region that lieth round about. That is Paul and Barnabas. So from Iconium, right, you see Lystra and Derbe, which is around here. So that's where they had to flee to. And there they preached the gospel, and there sat a certain man at Lystra, impotent in his feet, so he couldn't walk, being a cripple from his mother's womb, who never had walked. So he had never walked before. He was crippled from birth. The same heard Paul speak, who steadfastly beholding him and perceiving that he had faith to be healed. So Paul looked at him and he saw in his face, in his spirit, that this guy, he believes. He has faith. So Paul said to him with a loud voice, stand upright on thy feet. And he leaped and walked. Just like that. Just like that. Just by saying it. Man. And when the people saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices, saying in the speech of Lycaonia, the gods are come down to us in the likeness of men. Oh boy. And they called Barnabas Jupiter and Paul Mercurius, because he was the chief speaker. And the other names for these are Zeus and Hermes. Then the priest of Jupiter, which was before their city, brought oxen and garlands onto the gates, and would have done sacrifice with the people. So they believed that Paul and Barnabas were the gods come down on earth. So they were coming ready to sacrifice unto them. Which when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of, they rent their clothes and ran in among the people, crying out, whoa, 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 hold on, slow down, and saying, Sirs, why do ye these things? We also are men of like passions with you. We're look, no, we're not no gods coming down. We're humans, we're men just like you. And preach unto you that ye should turn from these vanities unto the living God, which made heaven and earth and the sea and all things that are therein. So like we're men just like you, and we're preaching the very thing you're trying to do is what we're trying to turn you away from, right? Put away those vanities. Who in times past suffered all nations to walk in their own ways. Nevertheless, he left them not without witness that he did good, and gave us rain from heaven and fullness and fruitful seasons, filling our hearts with food and gladness. That is the Most High, basically showing through His grace, His existence and His power onto us. And with these sayings, they scarce restrained they the people, that they had not done sacrifice unto them. So just barely they got them to stop and not to sacrifice unto them. So by redirecting the glory to say, look, it's not us, it's the Most High, not us. And there came thither certain Jews from Antioch and Iconium, these guys, man. So when they heard that that's where Paul and Barnabas fled to, they came from Antioch and Iconium and came there to Lystra, where Paul and Barnabas were, and who persuaded the people, so they got into the ears of the people, stirred them up, and having stoned Paul, drew him out of the city, supposing he had been dead. Howbeit, as the disciples stood round about him, he rose up. So they basically stoned him to the point where they're like, okay, he's pretty much dead. Then they drew him out the city. And then, sometime later, he just pops back up. The Lord is like, nope, get back down there. You got work to do. So he gets up and came into the city. And the next day he departed with Barnabas to Derbe, right, which is here. And when they had preached the gospel in that city and had taught many, they returned again to Lystra and to Iconium and Antioch, confirming the souls of the disciples and exhorting them to continue in the faith. So they made their way back to those cities they had been through to exhort, those that they had first taught to hey, continue on, keep the faith, believe, pray, fast, continue, and you'll expound, you'll grow. And that we must, through much tribulation, enter into the kingdom of God. And when they had ordained them elders in every church, so they were basically setting up some structure and some order, they set up elders and had prayed with fasting, they commended them to the Lord, on whom they believed. All right, and reading that in the NLT, it says here, Paul and Barnabas also appointed elders in every church. With prayer and fasting, they turned the elders over to the care of the Lord, in whom they had put their trust. And after they had passed through Pisidia, they came to Pamphylia. So going back, looking up here, so they returned back the blue way now, right? Back to Iconium, back to Antioch. They came down to Pisidia, which is the little to the west of Antioch here, southwest. They came to Pamphylia, and when they had preached the word in Perga, they went down into Italia. All right, so eventually they came down to Perga, and then to the left where Italia is, and thence sailed to Antioch, from whence they had been recommended to the grace of God for the work which they fulfilled. So they remember you have the Antioch that's in Galatia and the one in Syria. So it says, finally they returned by ship to Antioch of Syria, where their journey had begun. The believers there had entrusted them to the grace of God to do the work they had now completed. Verse 27, and when they were come and had gathered the church together, they rehearsed all that God had done with them, and how he had opened the door of faith onto the Gentiles, i.e., to the Israelite foreigners amongst them that believed. And there they abode long time with the disciples. So this is back at Antioch here where they started. Okay, not the Antioch in Asia Minor, not the one in Galatia, but the one here in Syria. And that brings us to the end of the book of Acts, the 14th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Bracha, Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.